So first of all, Larry, as you were walking through the museum today, describe what it was that you were feeling.
Well, I guess it was a little different than other times just for the fact because I knew at the end of the road of seeing everything and hearing about everything and picking up artifacts and everything that there was a signature that was going to go on the wall. And that was in the back of my mind the entire day, thinking I think it's behind me right now, that something that was going to happen. So it was constantly knocking at my head, and obviously something I've never felt before in the few times I've been here.
So as you're walking through the museum, was there any one particular artifact or exhibit that you saw that stands out right now in your memory as something that you hadn't thought of or connects to something that you were part of?
Yeah, I don't know if anything connected or something I haven't thought of. I thought the Babe Ruth bat picking up at the end and seeing that thing that was actually belonged to him. I was a big fan of the movie A League of Their Own, so going through the women's part of it was a neat thing for me to see all those faces that I saw in the movie, then the real faces behind it all was kind of neat. And then I think where it all kind of started, the very first room we started in where baseball began, and the gloves or lack of gloves and stuff that they were using to play the game and how it began, it was quite amazing. And the history behind it is way back farther than anything I ever knew.
Good. So when you were growing up as a youngster in Maple Ridge, British Columbia, who had the greatest influence on you?
Well, Mike Bossy was my favorite hockey player. So that, my brother Kerry, who played hockey, and we watched him. My other brothers who played hockey and baseball. But I know your question is as far as a baseball player, but growing up I didn't watch a lot of baseball. Oddly enough, he's the one player that I probably knew about more than anything else is a Hall of Famer in Mike Smith. That was one guy I watched play a little bit, but never really tuned into baseball a lot. Occasionally we go down to the Kingdom in Seattle and watch games as a kid, but no aspirations of ever wanting to play on the field. My thoughts were hockey.
How far away from Kingdom are you?
3-hour drive.
Okay. Right. So you were signed as a free agent by the Expos in '84. Kind of a two-part question. How did that signing come about, and how did you get exposure to baseball scouts during that time, and was there one scout that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, we talked about that today. In 1984, I played for the Coquitlam Reds, a team back home, and we played about a 72-game schedule. And mixed in with that, I got asked to try out for Team Canada to play on the World Youth Team Canada team against 16 to 18-year-olds. That was in Kindersley, Saskatchewan, and ended up making that team. And then a little while after that, a couple of weeks, I played represented Team British Columbia, and we played against college teams, and I did very well against those teams as well. So I had two good tournaments mixed in with this 70-game season that I played in, which was far and beyond anything I've ever done in baseball before. And we tried talking about that today because my memory's not great on who actually. Bob Rogers was a scout that came to Vancouver with my dad and I signed. But Jim Fanning was also one that saw me play and recommended perhaps to Bob Rogers to do this signing. So I've got mixed stories about the whole situation because I don't remember as a 16-year-old kid exactly how it went down. So, but those were the two names, Bob Rogers and Jim Fanning, that stand out at me the most, seeing me in those two tournaments.
Okay. So growing up, hockey was your first passion, and your brother played it. But what was it that you were able to take from your hockey playing days, your hockey career, so to speak, that translated to baseball?
Well, probably number one, and maybe the only one, is I was a goalie. So the hand-eye coordination that goes along with being a goaltender into playing baseball were equal, if not more pronounced as a goaltender, and seeing a puck coming at you at 100 and some odd miles an hour from close range, there's zero reaction time, similar as a pitch coming at you at 100 miles per hour. The reaction time is very, very, very quick.
Okay. So Ken Brett was your manager. You mentioned Ken's name in your press conference this morning. What did Ken do for you ultimately that helped you join his brother George here in Cooperstown?
Wow, those were the early days when the guy sitting here right now had no idea of what I was getting into. I signed they gave me $1,500 to sign a contract, and I jumped at it. It was $2,000 Canadian, so I got in a car and drove down to Florida for spring training, and then ended up in Utica with Ken. And I'd honestly, I'd be making up stuff if I didn't say I don't remember a ton from the season other than my base running mishap that I had. But I hit .223 with 2 home runs. I was no good, and I don't recall a lot from that season, or maybe a little bit even my next season. Things were it was just a young kid playing baseball with maybe not the dreams of every other kid that grew up with it, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, but so you say you weren't any good at it, but obviously somebody saw something in you that kept you around. They obviously didn't release you and send you back home. They saw something in you. So after those days in Utica, what was it? What do you recall that sort of maybe turned the corner for you?
I guess if we're going to try to find a name or a reason why I got stuck, they stuck with me. The one that seems to jump out from what I remember was Ralph Rowe was the hitting coach back in the day. And he always said, there's something about this guy, you guys don't mess with him. Let him do his thing. I've got him, and keep him around. And Ralph Rowe, I went down to instructional leagues for many years in a row after my minor league season to try to learn how to hit. And so I guess if I was to guess, there was one person that kept me around, even though I was terrible. Ralph might have had something to do with that.
Was there some sort of maybe a sense of pride that motivated you to try to make a go of it, to work really hard to get better?
Well, I had to. That was the only way I could go. Like I say, I was bad, so I wanted to learn. I want to compete. When you retire, the one thing you miss is competing. Mm-hmm. And so when my baseball career is over, I didn't have that anymore. So when I was at the beginning of it all, I wasn't really competing because I couldn't bring myself to the level of everybody else I was playing against. So it was always a real struggle, but also a competition within myself to make myself better. So that's what I did.
Okay. So with the Expos, you came up about the same time as Marquis Grissom, and then you guys formed what is considered by many to be one of the greatest outfields in baseball. You, Grissom, Moises Alou, roaming the outfield there in Montreal. What was it like playing with those two guys, and what was it about the three of you that made that outfield lineup so good?
Yeah, young guns, right? I mean, we were, I really believe we were all above average at our position. All of us had above average speed and above average arms. Those are 3 pretty good things that you usually don't see amongst all 3 outfielders. So it made it fairly simple, especially for me in right field. I think Marquis probably had the most work being in center to cover all the ground from us, but we knew what each other was thinking. We got along well, we were great friends, and we made each other laugh, and just taking the field every day was a joy. And I think that just really made it simpler for us.
So did that sort of relationship, enjoying playing with each other, help the communication between the 3 of you out there? Oh
yeah, there was constant joking going around, fly balls coming down and you take it, I got it stuff, but we always knew what each other was going to catch and get to. There was rarely, I don't remember any off the top of my head, any collisions. If a ball was going in a gap, I knew if Grip was going to catch it, and I would back him up, and vice versa. He knew when I was going to get, and he would go behind me.
Okay. So the baseball strike of '94 had a devastating effect on the finances in Montreal. The team was basically sold off after that season. What do you recall of those days during that process? And then, despite the fact that the move to Colorado obviously was very good for you, how did you look, when you look back on that experience at the end in Montreal, what is it that you recall?
Well, as it turns out, it's sadness. It's first a '94 team that if the Expos were going to have a real legit chance at winning a World Series, that was obviously the team that was going to do it. You know, we're 30 games above 500 when the strike hits. We're told maybe a couple weeks is how long it's going to last, and then obviously it doesn't. It ends the season, and maybe ended baseball in Montreal. You know, that team stays together, the strike gets resolved, things move on. Not saying we're going to win a World Series, but there's a good chance that we could have. And then maybe things change in that off season to where we're kept together as a group, and guys like myself aren't going elsewhere. You know, you keep that core together, a very young core that could have performed for years and years, maybe more than one World Series. You know, maybe the team's success keeps it there. A lot of unanswered questions that nobody will ever know.
Right. So you entered the prime of your career as you made that move to Colorado. You had your MVP season there. You won 5 more Gold Gloves, a couple of Silver Sluggers. You were named to 4 more All-Star teams there as a Rocky. Imagine that you enjoyed your time in Colorado, but was there something about playing there that brought success to you, or was it the culmination of all that hard work over the years that made you the player that you became?
Well, I think I was trending in that direction anyway. After my '94 season in Montreal, I think that's when I really put it all together. You know, maybe more so a little bit in '92. That's when I really started to figure the game out a lot more. But '94 is when it all molded into one for me. And then going to Colorado. I mean, obviously, it's a hitter's paradise. There's no denying that. So that takes that one thing of confidence. You know, that thing between your ears is a mighty tool. And when that thing got straightened out, and I had that belief, and the power of the mind games couldn't beat me. And, you know, I could beat the game mentally. That '95 season, that first one in Colorado, really helped me continue that way, no matter where I was playing. And just, you know, I mentally beat the game. So. And that confidence helped there. But, you know, like I say, it's a beautiful city. I suggested to go there to my agent, but not knowing what how I could reap on the benefits as a hitter, but because it reminded me of back home in British Columbia, the mountains, the weather, you know, the snow, the air, just it was all very familiar to me.
So your MVP season, 1997, is a magical one. You led the National League in home runs, on-base percentage. You led all of baseball in slugging, OPS, total bases. That was also the only season where you were able to play at least 150 games. Injuries are always a part of an athlete's career, and you had your share. But what was it about that season that made that made that season so magical for you?
Well, I think it was just one of those things. Like I say, I wasn't injured. That helped, obviously, but you know, I think we all play hurt. You know, I played hurt practically my whole career, as every player does.
Right.
But the injury was the black cloud over my head, and if I could have avoided them, I would have loved to. But you know, just everything seemed to roll together. You know, I think the first few games I didn't start off good, but I think the last game in Cincinnati, then we went to Montreal, and I had a 3 home run game there, and just everything started to snowball after that. And getting on base all the time in front of me, guys were always on base. Normal ground balls that were outs or broken bat hits were all falling in. Just everything just continued to work, and just I guess I don't know. You know, I think I took batting practice on the field a handful of times the entire year because it was something that was working for me. You know, there's a lot of things that I had going superstitiously wise, and that was one of them that I can share. That you know, I didn't hit on the field, just hit in the cage, and really prepared myself in a different frame than I did every other year. And I think, you know, probably because I wasn't injured. You know, it was just playing hurt here a little bit and there, but staying off the DL.
Did you feel during that season that there was something special happening?
I think at the All-Star game is, you know, that's when all the questions were coming up, because I think I was hitting just under or just over 400 at the time. I don't quite remember, but yeah, everything was getting answered and asked there. So when I kind of figured, oh wow, this is going well, because you know, I don't put a lot of thought into it. I go out and just play every game.
Right. When
that game's over, I move on to the next one. I don't take anything with me other than the good stuff. So I leave all the bad stuff behind. So even a bad game meant nothing to me, because those happened all the time too.
So in '97, you had 409 total bases, becoming only the 18th player in the history of the game to reach 400 total bases in a single season. One of the aspects of your career that others talk about a lot is, as one of your best assets, is your ability to take an extra base. What made you so good at taking that extra base and moving up on the base paths?
Instincts? Yeah, I don't, like I say, I think learning the game as I learned it at such a late age, growing up not playing baseball, I think I absorbed everything maybe a lot more than anybody else did. You know, my minor league days, you know, my rookie ball, A-ball days, and the instructional leagues and the spring trainings, I had a lot to learn, and I think I absorbed it all so near and during my professional career that I think it stuck with me a lot better maybe than somebody that learned it back in high school and didn't make it to the big leagues till 8, 9, 10 years later. Well, I was 3, 4, 5 years later, so I think it maybe stuck with me a little bit more.
Okay. Who was the toughest pitcher you ever faced and why?
Well, if we're going to go with numbers, Wally Whitehurst I was 0 for 18 against. Might not have been the toughest pitcher I ever faced, but I couldn't get a hit off of him.
He's not here.
Yeah, he should be in my book. But I think I've always said John Candelaria was a tough one. Just stepping in against him as a young left-handed hitter, you know, he made your knees knock a little bit. I think the obvious ones, you know, with Greg Maddux, didn't throw hard, but living proof that you don't have to throw upper 90s to get somebody out. If you can move the ball and know where it's going, it's unhittable, you know. And he did that. He did that to me regularly.
Tracy Ringolsby told us that one of the things that he really liked about you was that when you had a good game, the Rockies won, or you performed well, you were nowhere to be found. When you made a mistake, you did something in the ball game that maybe lost the game, or the Rockies didn't win, you would spend an hour at your locker answering questions. There's a certain amount of respect that I think that writers have for guys like that. What was it that prompted you to act in that way?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I swear there were some games where I was horrible and I just went in the trainer's room and iced something as well. I don't think it was always that good. You know, I'm sure I had some games where I was miserable and didn't show up, but I knew there were situations where I needed to own up to maybe something I did wrong, you know, and I made a mistake tonight. And, you know, I don't know if I'm a perfectionist. I'm an athlete that doesn't like failure, which most athletes don't. So if I failed, I want to explain, you know, how or why, or, you know, or say I'm sorry. You know, I made an error tonight and it cost us the game. That sucks. I don't want to hide from those things. So I guess maybe that I don't even know if that answers the question, but I'm just trying to find my way back to those days. I didn't really think about it. I just acted. You know, it wasn't a thought that I got to make sure if I blow the game for us, I want to be available. I think I was available and not available on certain occasions as well.
Okay. So you played 17 years in the big leagues. As you reflect on all those years and all the hard work that you put into the game, what do you feel was the most important asset to you as a player?
I think my willingness to learn and my observing the game. To go back what I said, I didn't have the youth coaching and playing times as a lot of kids did, so I had to learn the game at a late age, and I think that's the ability that I had to put it all together by watching and listening to other people. You know, I would try anything, and if it worked, I would stick with it. If it didn't, I probably wouldn't go back to it unless I was in a real dire strait, and then try something different, you know. But I was always willing to try something, listen to somebody, and use it in the game and see how it worked out.
Okay. Hall of Fame election forces a person to reflect not only on those that helped them get to this point, but also on the overarching legacy of a career that warrants this honor. Considering where you are now, considering what's going to be transpiring in the summer, what do you feel is a legacy of your career? If you could write one sentence, if you could write part of the text that's on your plaque forever, what is it that you want it to be?
Well, you should have gave me a warning on this question. That's a tough one. You know, I don't know if perseverance is the right word, if I'm thinking of a word to put on there, because like I say, I wasn't good young, you know, when you sign a contract and you play professionally, I wasn't very good. So I think, you know, maybe had the willingness to learn, to listen and learn, might be something that would mean a lot to me and maybe hopefully mean something to a lot of other kids, because it's, you know, I could have easily given up or not pursued or continued doing what I did because I was that bad. But there was never that thought in my head. It was always move forward and keep getting better. Listen to what people are telling you, and I did that. So I think that's one of the biggest things that helped me be successful.
So we're sitting here in the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum's Plaque Gallery. We're just in a few months, you're going to be, you know, set in bronze, hanging on the wall right over there. You're mere feet away from, you know, Babe Ruth and Ted Williams and teammates like Gary Carter and Tim Raines, Randy Johnson. They're all here. You're forever going to be amongst and considered one of the greatest that ever played the game. Is that still overwhelming? Is it ultimately satisfying or is it some sort of mixture of both?
Yeah, it's, I think I said today to somebody that I still don't feel what I'm supposed to feel. I signed that wall where my plaque's gonna hang, and that's telling me that I'm getting one of these bronze heads, as you say. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't smacked me upside the head yet. It really hasn't. You know, even sitting here talking to you right here, I've done thousands and thousands of interviews like this, and this one feels the same, you know, because it's just a signature on the wall right there right now. There's actually not that thing hanging up there. There's not that ceremony that's happened where I got to do this speech that I'm terrified about. So all that stuff, I think obviously come induction weekend is really when it's going to really hit me. I think it's there. It's trying to smack me on the side of the head, but it just hasn't yet. And I don't know if I'm looking forward to it, because I'm an emotional guy. So I'm sure I'll be a crying, babbling little baby when it happens. So I'll say sorry for that right now.
You talked a little bit in the press conference about your father. You think it smacked him upside the head yet?
Yeah. When I got the call, I promised my mom and my dad that I would call them. So I got the call. There was two people I called, and it was mom and dad. So, time out.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it was, but I called them and I filled them in both what happened and both their reactions. You know, I don't know if I was babbling more or they were. You know, it was kind of a mixed reaction between all of us. And you know, Dad had cameras at his house, so he had to reenact when he watched it on TV like he didn't know. I gave him crap for that because I didn't think he did a good job. But no, without them, it doesn't start. It doesn't happen. I'm not here. So that's where the ball started rolling. That December 1st, 1966.
I think your dad's gonna have a ball here this summer.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's all I have for you.
Okay.
Didn't mean to make you cry.
Oh, it's all right. No, it's just. I'll show.
Thank you.